Good morning. So by now you should be finished reading chapter 3 of tonight. And again, you should have one dialectical journal entry for chapter 2 because it's very short, about 4 pages. And chapter 3 is 12 pages. So for chapter 3, I am requiring 3 dialectical journal entries. So what I'm going to do first is just take you through what I consider to be some of the quotes in chapter 3 that stand out the most, whether it's because something important happened to Eliezer, or maybe some figurative language was used, or maybe he's referring to a certain person or place that you may have heard of. So again, I'm just going to take you through chapter 3, and then I will show you where Eliezer is on the map right now. Okay, so again, chapter 2 ended with Eliezer and his family and the last of the Jews from the town of Sayet. They had arrived at Birkenau, which he calls the reception center for Auschwitz. All right, and again, the way that the concentration camps sort of worked, that the Nazis operated, was at many camps, you would arrive at sort of like the reception center, as it says Birkenau is, and you would be put through what is called the selection. So that means that the Nazis are deciding whether you are going to be able to be useful to them, so you're going to be used for slave labor, or whether you would not be useful to them, meaning you would be put to death. So Birkenau is the place where this happened. It's also referred to as Auschwitz III. All right, so again, if you read that Common Lit article about Auschwitz, it sort of described the differences between the different parts of the camp because it was quite large. And again, as you might have read, over 1 million people died just at Auschwitz and Birkenau and the different parts of Auschwitz. So it was one of the most deadly concentration camps that the Nazis used. All right, so again, they are at Birkenau at the beginning of chapter 3. And the very first line of chapter 3 stands out to me because Eliezer says that at last their illusions were left behind in the train. So because they have arrived at Birkenau, where they can literally smell the death in the air, they no longer can convince themselves to have these false beliefs that they are going to be okay. All right, so again, he says their illusions have been left behind on the train, so their disillusionment is complete. All right. So the very first thing that happens when they arrive at Birkenau is an SS officer says men are to go one way and women are to go another way. And the SS are basically the kind of military organizations within the Nazis who carried out the genocide of the Holocaust. All right. So again, an SS officer comes up to them and tells them to separate by gender. So remember, Eliezer's family consists of him, his mother, his father. He has 2 elder sisters and then 1 younger sister. And he says that his younger sister, Zipporah, goes off with his mother. And in that place, at that moment, he was parting from his mother and Zipporah forever. So just like Eliezer told us in chapter 1 that his father would end up dying, we now know that his mother and Zipporah do not survive the concentration camps either. And actually, this book is dedicated to Eliezer's parents and younger sister. So the good news is that we know that his 2 older sisters survived, and actually he did reunite with them after the war. He doesn't really go into that in this book because this book just covers his journey through the concentration camp. But again, now we know that his mother and little sister did die, as well as his father. All right, so again, they arrive, they separate by gender, and Eliezer's one thought is not to lose his father because they are the only 2 males in their family. They get to stick together, and the females get to stick together as long as they are alive. All right, so again, they arrive and are preparing for the selection. They're not really aware of how that selection will work yet. So somebody comes up to Eliezer and asks how old he is, and he says, I'm not quite 15 yet. And that person tells Eliezer to say he's 18. And kind of the same thing happens with his father. So this stranger tells Eliezer's father to say that he is 40 instead of 50. And again, the reason for that is after the selection, they are deciding if you will be a useful worker. So it's best to kind of present yourself as someone who is of an age where you are capable of doing difficult So again, they are told to lie, and other prisoners keep coming up to them and saying, and like they're kind of in disbelief that Eliezer and the other Jews of Syet hadn't heard of Auschwitz yet. So again, they're like, hadn't you heard of Auschwitz and all the horror that was waiting for you here? And they had not. Okay, so again, Eliezer and some other prisoners think about revolting, so they think about fighting back, but ultimately they do not do so. And then finally, Eliezer is forced to go in front of Dr. Mengele, who is kind of a very notorious Nazi war criminal. So if you wanted to, you could do a little bit more research about Dr. Mengele. He is the person who did a lot of experiments on prisoners, especially on twins. So again, if you already have heard of him, that's one thing you may have heard of him for. All right, so again, Eliezer goes to the selection for that Dr. Mengele is conducting. He says that he's 18 and a farmer, so he lies. And then it says that he is sent to the left, but Eliezer waits to see if his father would go to the left as well. So Eliezer doesn't care if he's being told to live or die. He only cares that he stays with his father. And originally, they believe that they are going to the crematory. So again, if you read the Auschwitz article on Common Lips, you would know that how a lot of people were murdered when they arrived at Auschwitz is that they were poisoned with gas, and then their bodies were burned in a crematory. So actually, people generally were not burned alive in the crematory. They were first killed, and then their bodies were burned. And this is sort of part of the denial stage of genocide, where the Nazis covered up their crimes by burning the body. But again, at first they believe that they are going straight to death, okay? And Eliezer sees this very disturbing image. He sees a lorry, which is a truck, drive up to a pit and dump little children in that pit and sees the children burning. So this is an image that really sticks with him. It says that he could not sleep after seeing that. All right, so again, Eliezer is kind of in disbelief. Eliezer's father is also kind of not really knowing how to process what's going on. And briefly, Eliezer considers committing suicide. He says, I'm going to run into that electric wire. That would be better than slow agony in the flames. So again, Eliezer is considering committing suicide rather than letting himself be murdered by the Nazis. But then as he starts to hear his father pray, so his father is saying this prayer, Eliezer, as he feels revolt rise up in him, and why should I bless God? What had I to thank him for? So again, we know Eliezer as a very dedicated student to his religion, but for the first time he is starting to doubt his God. So this is a really big moment of transformation for him. So again, Eliezer and his father are still under the impression that they are about to be killed. They are walking closer and closer to a ditch that they think they will be burned in. Eliezer says he gathered all that was left of his strength so that he could throw himself on the barbed wire. But then 2 steps from the pit, they were ordered to turn left and go into a barrack, which is sort of like a building where people would sleep. Okay? Right before they go into the barracks, he says, do you remember Madame Schachter in the train? Remember, Madame Schachter is a woman who had visions of fire and said that she could see a fire on the train, and everyone thought she was crazy, but then they arrived at Auschwitz and actually did see the flames and smell people's bodies burning. So Eliezer here is kind of saying, like, Madame Schachter actually did see what we were going to see once we arrived at Auschwitz. All right, this next passage is probably the most famous passage from the book. It's really important. In fact, I would recommend picking maybe a piece of it to use for your dialectical journal if you have not picked your quotes yet. So again, in this passage, Eliezer repeats the word never and the word night. So we know that night is a symbol of like darkness in terms of maybe like this is a dark time for humanity, or he has very dark emotions right now going through what he's going through. And again, he repeats never. He says, I shall never forget that night, but that night turned my life into one long night. He shall never forget the smoke, never forget the faces of the little children. And then he says, I shall never forget those flames which consumed my face forever. So the flames he's referring to are again the literal flames that are burning bodies, but those flames figuratively consumed his faith. So it's saying that like his belief in God is starting to suffer because of what he has witnessed so far at Auschwitz. And again, this is just in the first few minutes of his arrival at Auschwitz. And we know that he has a lot more in store for him in these concentration camps. So again, I think this passage is really powerful, and he wanted to be pick a part of it to write about. All right, so moving on, a few more important pieces of this chapter. Again, we're only about a third of the way through right now. So Eliezer and his father are alive for now, and they're thinking about kind of what their best strategy is to survive from here on out. So Eliezer is thinking like, oh, maybe we should try to say that we are really strong, so they take us for a certain job so they can't kill us. But his father says, no, we shouldn't draw attention to ourselves. All right, so they're kind of like discussing their strategy. And then on page, let's see, we are on page 21 of chapter 3. Eliezer says like, we barely even thought about like the people who we were not with anymore. So like he's like almost already forgotten about his mother and his sister, even though they were just separated from each other. He says it's like our senses were blunted and everything was in a fog. All right. One important word that you might start seeing in chapter 3 and that you will see throughout the next few chapters is kapo, K-A-P-O. And this is a word that refers to a prisoner who is placed in charge of other prisoners. So again, we have the SS who are in charge of running the concentration camps, but then they kind of select prisoners to be in charge of each other. And those prisoners like might get certain benefits, like they might get more food or they might get protection. So again, a capo refers to a prisoner in charge of another prisoner. So they might be Jewish themselves. All right. So again, they're kind of going through the process of entering Birkenau, the concentration camp, now that they know they are staying. So again, on the previous page, they have been told to take off all of their clothes. They are sent to the barber. Their bodies are shaved, and then they are doused in petrol or gasoline in order to disinfect them in case they had any diseases. And then finally, on the bottom of page 21, Eliezer is again saying, I can't believe this has only been one night so far. I've already become a completely different person. All right, moving on to page 22. Towards the bottom of page 22, again, a capo, or sorry, this is an SS officer who is talking to them. An SS officer says, this is a concentration camp. You have to work or go straight to the crematory. The choice is in your hands. So then he's kind of saying you can either do labor for us or we'll kill you. All right, so that's how it's working so far at Birkenau. And then on page 7, Eliezer's father receives a beating for asking a simple question. So he just asks where the lavatories or the bathroom are. And Eliezer is kind of shocked at himself because he didn't react when his father was beaten. So he kind of feels like, again, like, had I already changed so much, I can't believe I didn't stick up for my father. Moving on to when they finally arrive at the true Camp Auschwitz. This is the bottom of page 23. So again, they have arrived at Birkenau, survived the inspection and the selection, and now they have been moved to the main camp of Auschwitz. And above the gate, there's an inscription that says, work is liberty. And of course, it's actually in German, but this is the translation, work is liberty. And a different translation of this phrase is work will set you free. And this is sort of like, I don't know, a manipulative saying that the Nazis used to their prisoners. So like, if you work, then you will be able to live, sort of. So that's what's inscribed over the gate at Auschwitz. All right. Again, Auschwitz, in Eliezer's opinion, is slightly better than Birkenau, and that's because there's a little bit less death there because the selection takes place at Birkenau. All right. And then on page 24 that we're on, again, they have a new capo in charge of them who was a young Pole, and he actually says like some kind of like nice words to them. So Eliezer says these are the first human words. Like the capo is telling them have faith, like you have to believe that you'll be okay, or else you're going to be selected. selected, like, don't worry, like, I'm here for you, sort of. So again, Eliezer remembers these words because they were so important and so nice after all of that horror that they had just seen. Okay, on the bottom of this page, Eliezer receives his tattoo with his prisoner number. So from now on, any of the guards who talk to him will refer to him as this number, A7713. And this is part of the dehumanization that the Nazis used towards their prisoners. So again, that's an important stage in genocide because if you are not a person, if you're just a number, then it's easier to kind of like commit murder in your mind because you're like, oh, that person is not really a person. All right. So again, this is Eliezer's prisoner number. And then finally, towards the end of chapter 3, Eliezer and his father run into a relative of theirs named Stein, and Stein asked Eliezer if they had heard from his wife because he had been deported a couple of years ago. Eliezer remembers that they had not had a letter from them, but he lies to Stein and says that his wife and his children are well. And again, that was a lie. They had not heard from him. We learned that they stay at Auschwitz for 3 weeks, Eliezer and his father. They don't really have much to do. They're just kind of waiting around to be assigned for work. And then finally, we learn that Stein gets some actual news about Reisel and the children. So Eliezer had lied, but somebody had come from Antwerp, their hometown, and it is implied that Stein does not receive good news about what happened to them, so they never saw their relative again. So again, Eliezer made the decision to lie, probably to comfort his relative, but he ends up hearing the truth from somebody else. All right, and then finally, chapter 3 sort of ends with, again, Eliezer's father kind of trying to give Eliezer some hope about his mother and little sister Zipporah. But both of them kind of are thinking like, oh, maybe you still think they're alive, so they don't want to talk about what they think has probably happened to them. And then finally, at the end of chapter 3, Eliezer and his father march to their new concentration camp, Buna, which is just a labor camp. So again, generally people are not like kind of killed in large numbers at Buna. A lot of people will die of maybe diseases or if they commit any sort of like crimes against the guards or things like that, they might be killed at Buna. But generally, this is not a death camp. This is a labor camp. So Eliezer and his father have been chosen for slave labor. Okay, so that is chapter 3. Again, I think chapter 3 is one of the most important chapters in the whole book because it shows you what it's like to arrive at a concentration camp and kind of what it feels like to witness all these horrifying things for the first time. So now I'll just quickly show you the map. So again, Eliezer started here in his hometown of Sayet. They took the train to Auschwitz and Birkenau, and Buna is really in the same place as Auschwitz and Birkenau. It says that Eliezer and his father just had to march 4 hours to get to Buna, so maybe about 10 to 15 miles away, but they're all sort of part of Auschwitz. All right, so the next couple of chapters will feature Eliezer and his father at Buna and doing their labor as they are forced to do. And I believe that is everything I wanted to say about chapter 3. So as always, if you have questions, feel free to ask me, and please turn in your journal for chapters 2 and 3 by tomorrow if you are able to. So again, 1 entry for chapter 2, 3 entries for chapter 3. All right, I will talk to you all tomorrow.